creatures on planet Earth, by far the luckiest is the Homo sapien. Humans have language, opposable thumbs, and when we can't physically do something like fly or make toast, we are so creative we invent machines that do it for us. But best of all, unlike most other animals, we don't spend our day wondering if we'll be eaten. We don't worry that we might be suddenly devoured by a passing paperboy. We don't fear being plucked from the water by a ravenous swimming bath attendant. Most of us sleep happy in the knowledge that humans are at the very top of the food chain. Except, of course, when we ignore warning signs. The signs that read, "Shark-infested water," "Do not pat the tiger," or "Hugging of python strictly prohibited." In which case we find ourselves one link down in the chain, which is all nature needs to weed out the edible stupid. Mr. Tristram Murrenfeld was very stupid. He had ignored all the signs. The stop sign, the no entry sign, the private road no access get lost sign, even the sign that read, "Oi, stupid, army firing range in constant use." Today, his brand new state-of-the-art lightweight mountain bike had all his attention. Tristram had spent over £1,000 customising the bike, adding gas-powered hydraulics under the saddle, and today he was testing the new feature for the first time. No way he was going to let any stupid warning sign get in his way. The veins in his temple stuck out like fat worms in a shallow puddle as he pedalled up an achingly steep track, sweat trickling down under his goggles, stinging his eyes. The muscles in his legs were stretched to the limit. Every thread in his clothing rubbed at his skin in all the worst places. He shut his eyes in an attempt to dull the pain and clear the saline gloop gathering in their corners, but it had no effect. And he shut them at precisely the wrong moment. With a sharp jolt, he opened them to see he was shooting down a perilously steep slope. Any normal person would have jammed on the brakes, but hurtling down this precipice was giving Tristram a break from pedalling, and he knew he would need the momentum to get up the steeper slope looming opposite, which he now suddenly found himself shooting off the top of, into what is bizarrely known as thin air. This was it. This was the moment he was waiting for, and Tristram gleefully flipped a small switch next to the brakes. "Yo, Kawasaki, go!" a voice in his head squealed as he began to rise from the saddle, the bike dropping away below him. The switch operated the latest bit of high-tech kit, and as his bottom rose, the saddle, amazingly, rose with it, extended on the costly hydraulic arm, allowing Tristram to sit whilst standing. "Respect the techno!" he yelled, wondering if he had time to pull out his phone and take a picture. Then Tristram looked down and saw the ground falling away rather more steeply than he was prepared for. He was now a full 12 metres in the air and rising. He felt his heart flutter and his grip on the handlebars tighten. Now, as you know, the main reason you rise out of the saddle is to soak up the impact through your legs when you hit the ground again. Comfort really isn't the priority when you're plummeting. What Tristram should have installed, he now realised, was a parachute. He hit the ground hard, the hydraulics jammed, and he flew headlong into thick brambles by the edge of the wood. He lay for a moment, winded and shaking, staring at the sky and a startled squirrel. Limping out of the brambles, his purple lycra shorts cut to shreds, Tristram found his bike in a ditch and Patrick, his cycling buddy, laughing hysterically. Patrick didn't even wait to see if Tristram was okay. He just snapped his cycle shoe back in the pedal and was off. Some buddy, thought Tristram. The track they'd been following had started on a flat, windswept moor that had fast become moor with heather, moor with shrubs, then moor with scattered trees. The track had become rocky, almost impassable, then muddy and rocky, then downright dangerous. Coming off their bikes at speed would have resulted in a broken arm or wrist, despite all the tough Kevlar padding they were wearing. Finally, the track entered the thick of a wood where it rose and fell like a roller coaster, and Patrick whooped and cheered as he flew higher and further over each rise. Hey, he was a freeform radical mountain dude. He was, in fact, a bank clerk from Stoke. Stopping his bike so the rear wheels span round in a flurry of mud, Patrick looked back up the track he'd come down with a sudden pang of concern. Tristram was nowhere in sight. His friend should have been just behind him. It wasn't like Tristram Murrenfeld to let a tumble bruise his ego. Perhaps the fall had been worse than it appeared. Perhaps the Kevlar padding wasn't as tough as it proclaimed. Perhaps he should go back. Perhaps. The dragon was jet black, speckled with brown, perfect camouflage for stalking a wood. For half an hour it had followed the two cyclists, winding like a river through the trees. The huge, scaled beast could have caught Tristram the moment he landed from the fall, but dragons don't like chewing bramble. Instead, it waited till the young man was back on the track and, more importantly, alone. It had snapped like a whip from the trees, swallowing Tristram whole before he even had chance to scream. Now, though, the dragon was out in full view, right behind Patrick. The creature's long grey shadow would have been a clue, but it was being cast the wrong direction, down the hill. The creature's loud snorting would have made Patrick spin round in a second, but the thrash metal music on his iPod was drowning out all natural sound. It was the strange, sulphurous smell that alerted him, as a large glob of dragon saliva spattered into the glutinous puddle forming round the bike's rear wheel. Patrick, sensing something wasn't right, sensing danger, began to turn, slowly. And too late. The beast snapped up the second boy, flipping him high in the air, hoping the metal contraption he was sitting on would fall away, but Patrick's cycle shoes were locked in the pedals, and as the dragon snapped him back mid-turn, it found the bike still part of its meal. Patrick never considered that the Kevlar padding would end up protecting him from the gnashing teeth of a dragon, and he wondered just how long it would hold out as he thrashed and punched at the stinking flesh inside the beast's cavernous mouth. The dragon snorted, shaking its prey, irritated by its struggling. It thought to drop the creature and look for a deer, but the dragon hadn't tasted human flesh in a long time, and its appetite whetted by the first hoped there would be others. Unblinking, fiery red eyes scanned left and right for witnesses as a bloodied shoe and a knee pad fell from the corner of its jaws. The only onlookers, a dozen fat sparrows, perched a safe distance away, watched as the dragon slid back into the wood. Then suddenly, spat out of the trees, the bike, without rider, crashed to the ground, saddle missing, spokes bent, tyres burst. And this time, there was no silencing the screams.